presentation of Financial Crisis Recovery.
Foreclosure, short sales, bankruptcy, credit card debt, job loss, depreciating home values, money management. Peace of mind when it comes to your finances seems completely out of reach under current conditions, but there is a way to achieve it. For the next 60 minutes, you're going to find out how to cover your assets. Cover your assets. Now, here's nationally renowned speaker and expert on getting you on the path to financial strength, Todd Rooker.
Good morning. Good morning and welcome to Cover Your Assets on ESPN 1500. We are so happy to be here on this 4th of July weekend, here talking about money. This morning we're going to be talking a little bit about money, and as always, I'd like to encourage our callers to call in. The phone number 651-646-8255. Say that number again, 651-646-8255. I'm going to field questions on anything that has to do with your situation. I want you to feel comfortable calling me to offer a little insight into what those questions might be. Remember, I'm the guy who has to know what the CPA, the attorney, the financial advisor, the mortgage broker, credit specialist, and real estate agent know, all rolled into one. And then rather than having a what could be a somewhat disjointed perception of things, meaning that each person has their own particular discipline, and they tend to operate within that box. That's why you can go to multiple professionals, and you can get varied answers and things that could tend to make you more confused than when you started. My job is to know enough about every one of those areas, and I do not sell real estate. I'm not going to sell you an investment, although I've been in the financial planning business for 28 years. I'm not going to sell you a mortgage. I'm not going to sell you credit repair services. My job is to help you create a cohesive strategy to address everything, minimize the damage through a financial crisis, and then help you recover as quickly as possible thereafter, and moreover, to ensure that you're never in this compromised position again. Beyond that, if you're concerned with asset protection and need to know how to avoid that situation and ensure that you are never actually in that position, well, then I've got the answers to those things too. So with that, I want to begin today's conversation by saying, as I always do, that when you begin to talk about all things financial, you have to develop a financial vocabulary. And that, of course, means that you understand the terms and recognize the definitions within these terms, so that when you're speaking with a CPA, when you're speaking with a financial advisor, when you're speaking with a real estate agent, a mortgage broker, an attorney, you have at least a semblance of understanding of the terms that are pertinent and relevant to the conversations, so that you can actually have a meaningful dialogue with that person. And that sounds like a minor issue. It is not. I know from personal experience that often I'm trying to speak with someone and I'm trying to bring them along in the conversation, and it is a bit like trying to teach them a new language in the space of an hour. It just isn't doable because they don't understand enough about the basic topics to actually expand and build upon it. So whenever we do the show, I'm always encouraging you to listen carefully to the topics. Feel free to take notes and even to pursue the definitions of things that you don't understand, so you begin to develop that financial vocabulary that is so important. So with that, I want to launch into the first and most important component in trying to make decisions from what I like to call a position of financial accuracy. In all the issues that a person might be facing today, short sale, foreclosure, bankruptcy, deciding whether or not they should accept a loan modification or a deed in lieu, whether they should buy a car, how much they can afford in a home, any financial decision that affects the rest of your budget, which frankly every financial decision must affect the rest of your budget, has to be made from a position of financial accuracy. So let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. A lot of people out there today are dreaming about the government loan modification program, essentially, which is a 2% interest rate that typically under their program is going to be guaranteed for 5 years, then can adjust to up to 1% per year, and then will fix at a 5% rate for the life of the loan. Hey, it's a wonderful thing. If you're sitting at a 5, 6, 7, maybe even 8% interest rate, well, then my goodness gracious, having a 2% interest rate would make a dramatic difference in your financial life. However, Do you know enough about your own personal finances to recognize whether or not that would actually fix your problem, or whether you would wind up right back in a compromised financial position very quickly thereafter? So I'll give you some statistics as to why I say this. Less than 3% of the modifications that are applied for that are permanent modifications, where you're actually going to get an actual modified, principally modifying the loan that you have, maybe going from 5 to 3, 4, 5, whatever the percentage interest rate is. Of the less than 3%, so remember, if your whole plan is based on this idea that you're going to get a loan modification, you need to know going in that you've got a 97% chance of not getting a loan modification. So if you do get one, I bet it would shock most people to find out that of the few people who actually get them, within 90 days, 70% of the people who have taken those modifications signed what equates to a new loan, saying that they now are agreeing to repay this debt. It's essentially like if you remember when you originated your loan and closed on your mortgage originally, or refinanced your mortgage, when you sign a modification, you are in essence doing the same thing. Well, of all the people who are out there applying, 97% are not getting them. 3% are, and of the 3% who are getting them, 70% of them will be back in foreclosure within 90 days. Wow. How is that possible? Because people are making decisions just assuming that something, a lower payment, is better than the higher payment, when in fact they have no more capacity to continue to make that lower payment than they did the higher payment, but they understand so little about their own personal finances that they will accept that payment and be right back in that horrible situation again with no backup plan. No where to go beyond that, simply run themselves out of money, and then wind up moving out of the home in foreclosure. And ironically, even though that at that point they may not have made mortgage payments for months and months, they'll then go on to a Minnesota rental market, which is very, very tough to find rental property. I don't know if you realize this, but in the state of Minnesota, we are one of the top 2 in the Twin City area, one of the top 2 rental markets in the entire country. That means it's harder to find a place to rent in the Twin City area than it is in nearly all other cities in the country. So you walk away from that home having not made a payment, maybe gone through that modification, failed, wound up missing payments and going right back into foreclosure. And then when you leave that home, somebody says, well, your credit is destroyed. If you want to rent a property for you and your family, we're going to need first month's rent. Let's say rent is $1,500. We need last month's rent. That's another $1,500. And literally, because your credit is so beaten up, I'm going to need at least $2,000 or $3,000 deposit money to give me confidence that you're going to continue to make these payments on time. And the individual says, well, my gosh, that's $5,000, $6,000. I don't have any money. And the landlord says, well, my goodness, you haven't made a mortgage payment in 10 months. How could you have no money? And that's typical. That's not unique. That's typical. So when you consider making decisions from a position of financial accuracy, before you accept the loan modification or any other so-called fix to your finances, you better know enough about your own personal finances to be able to make those decisions. And do I believe that most people do? No, I know they don't. And that doesn't mean that they're not smart enough. At no point would I ever want to insinuate that people are not smart enough to make their payment or to consider their own personal finances. I think they're really smart. I think the deal is that people are so smart they can basically delude themselves into anything that they want to hear. Because when it comes to money management and when it comes to controlled spending and having a budget, it's never been, nor will it ever be, about the mathematics. Because frankly, anybody can do the math. The mathematics is easy. I could teach a third grader to do the math that is required in doing a budget and balancing a budget. The problem is that basically everything related to money is psychological. And if that were not true, why in the world would I have the largest segment of my clients being financial advisors or people who are in the business of managing other people's money? I kid you not about that. Of the over 630 clients that I had last year, just under 30% of those, that means nearly 200 people of the clients that I saw last year, 200 families, were one of the spouses in the money management business, as in a certified financial planner, a broker of investments, a CPA, an accountant. Wow. And these people have as much trouble, if not more so, managing their money than anybody else. And it has nothing to do with their lacking in intelligence. These are very intelligent people. That's not the point. The point is that they're so good at manipulating the numbers to create the outcome that they want after the fact that literally they're not managing money. So, very quickly, let's talk about this. Where do people go wrong when it comes to making these decisions? Well, you can well imagine that when a person is in the midst of losing their home, the idea that they should be considering a budget or should be talking about a budget is, to them at that moment, the most absurd thing that they've ever heard. And now imagine that most of my clients are people who've never missed a payment in their entire lives, and maybe even at this point still have not. So when they come to me and I talk to them about their financial situation, and because their mortgage has adjusted or their income has gone down and their overtime is no longer available or the bonuses aren't out there, or for whatever reason, divorce, business failure, maybe an illness in the family, they've not missed a payment yet, most of them. And that's why when I begin talking to them about horrific things like bankruptcy and foreclosure and all these types of things, they oftentimes will look at me and say, I must be different than your other clients, Todd, because I don't think you understand. I haven't missed a payment yet. And I say, no, you're exactly like all of my clients. You haven't missed a payment yet. However, when you go through a person's budget, you can immediately see that they're in what's known as a burn rate. And there's one of those terms, burn rate, which means that the take-home pay that they are realizing at the end of each month or throughout the course of the month will not sustain even the minimum payments that they're making. That burn rate, meaning that if my income take-home pay is $4,000 per month and my monthly obligations minimally are $5,000, that means there's $1,000 per month that I'm in a burn rate, I'm upside down. So the question is, how come they're not missing payments yet? Because they probably got some resource, like a savings account, like maybe they're taking a loan from their retirement account. Maybe they're selling items, a trailer or a boat, and they're using that money to subsidize that upside-down burn rate each month. And, of course, most of the time, that amount of money, that savings account or the things that can be sold, is of a finite nature, meaning at some point you're going to run out. So obviously the fact that they've not missed a single payment yet really doesn't mean that they're not in a financial crisis. It just means that they're deluding themselves into thinking some way, somehow, they'll find a way to get out of this. Now, most of my clients, or at least many of them, are self-employed. And, of course, when you're self-employed, you've always had an answer to every problem you've ever had financially throughout your entire life. And here it is. You ready? I'll just make more money.